My girlfriend's entitled mother broke up my engagement in the middle of a restaurant just by being rude. My girlfriend and I were really ready to be engaged. We both agreed we wanted to get married, but I hadn't done the formal proposal yet because we wanted to meet each other's families first. I always thought the old trope about meeting the in-laws being a big fiasco was a myth, both because I was younger and more naive then, and because I'm lucky to have easy parents. My girlfriend met them for a few hours. Once we were alone, just me and them, I told my intentions and my mom asked, does she have any kids already? And my dad asked, does she have a good solid job? And they both asked, do you really love her? And that was that. I had their full support for the marriage. I thought meeting her parents would be the same. Some grilling was to be expected, but as long as I was honest and respectful, it would all be fine. They had my girlfriend when they were teenagers by surprise, so now they had another baby that they called a do-over daughter who was just 6 years old and who they wanted to raise properly. My girlfriend and I made the trip up to their city and I met them for the first time over dinner at a steakhouse. It was pretty upscale and we'd scheduled the dinner for 8 p.m, so I was surprised to see they'd brought the kid along with them. I met everyone at once and the initial awkwardness settled once we sat down. We were making great small talk when the 6-year-old said she was thirsty. No big deal, right? Well, all of a sudden, her mother Ellen starts screaming, water, water. A waiter came rushing over to see what the commotion was, and without even making eye contact with the poor guy, Ellen went, we'd been here forever and no one's even gotten us any water. My daughter's been asking. We had been sitting for about 15 or 20 minutes without service, but they were visibly behind, and there were no circumstances that would have warranted that shouting. I should have realized from how unfazed everyone else at the table was that I should be bracing myself for a long night, but I couldn't imagine what was to come at that point. The waiter rushed over with water and apologized for the delay, explaining a few very large parties had arrived all at once. The guy seemed sincere and quite affable, so I thought the water would just be an anomaly in an otherwise pleasant night. Then Ellen kicked into full gear. We'll need a kids menu, she informed the waiter. He said that they didn't have a kids menu, but that the chef could simplify most dishes. What do you mean you don't have a kids menu? Ellen replied in total disbelief, as though he'd said they didn't have a fire exit. He explained they didn't get too many child visitors and that there were enough plain foods on the menu that no separate menu had ever been necessary. Ellen sighed dramatically and waved him away. I tried to give him an apologetic glance, but understandably he didn't look back our way. I was so glad the poor guy left and didn't have to be subjected to her anymore. Meanwhile, she turned her attention on me and I almost wished he'd come back. At least he was getting paid to be here. She was like, so you're a screenwriter? And I explained, well, yes and no. I want to be, but it's hard to get a job in that field that you can support yourself in. So I'm working at a non-profit right now. There's a screenwriting component to the job though, so I'm really happy there. Ellen turned to her 6-year-old and went, hear that, hun? You want to be sure to snag a man who works for profit? Learn from this. It's not too late for you. I couldn't tell if she was trying to be funny or not, so I just let it pass, looking over to my girlfriend to see if she was even considering speaking up on my behalf. Nope. The waiter came back, visibly nervous. That hurt because he was so relaxed and personable at the start of the meal. He asked if we'd like to hear the specials before we ordered and Ellen said sure. The waiter started saying, Ellen just shouted next. The waiter said, okay. Then we have a broiled leg of grass-fed, Ellen, next, and on until he'd gone through all 7 or 10 specials. Even though she ultimately ordered off the menu, a plain ribeye, well done. She tried to order her daughter the same, but the kid said she just wanted plain mashed potatoes, so Ellen let her get mashed potatoes alone for dinner. After her order, she sent the waiter away. The rest of us hadn't even ordered yet, and everyone else just sat there like it was entirely normal. I waited for someone to say something, thinking it was more my girlfriend's place or her husband's, but when no one did, I couldn't help myself. Was the one steak and potatoes going to be for all of us, or? My girlfriend explained, in the tone you'd use for a tourist violating a sacred local taboo. My mom always has the way to put the kids' food in first, so we can get started right away. We'll order once the kitchen has hers. I thought she was joking, since Ellen didn't just order her kids' food, she also ordered her own dinner, so I laughed. Something funny? Ellen asked. Then I realized she was serious and I shut up. Thankfully, her dad at least recognized that what was normal for them might not be as regular to me and tried to lighten the mood with a change of topic. But not even 10 minutes after we'd ordered, Ellen started in again. Another table that had been there long before us got a side order of mashed potatoes with their meal. Ellen threw a total conniption. She was sputtering so inaudibly that none of us could figure out what was wrong at first. Finally, she managed to flag down some busboy who barely spoke English and began laying into him like he just sideswiped her on the freeway. He kept trying to explain he wasn't a server and he could go get one, but she wouldn't stop to breathe long enough for him to find someone who could actually help. All the while, I kept looking at my girlfriend for signs of embarrassment or at the very least irritation, but you wouldn't have known if she was even hearing any of this. Our waiter came over, somehow still feigning a smile despite knowing what he was walking into, and Alan actually goes, "Why did that table get mashed potatoes and ours haven't come yet?" The waiter kindly but concisely explained, "Well ma'am, those people ordered potatoes before your party had placed their order." Ellen looks this man dead in the eye and says, "Well, it doesn't matter when they ordered it. My daughter is the youngest one here. Her food should come out first." You could tell the waiter was working hard to restrain himself at this point. He explained it was a first come, first served policy and age didn't help one way or the other. He offered to go check on the potatoes. Ellen agreed, or more specifically, she said, "Yeah, you better," but I was clocking him and he went right back to his service station. 3 or 5 more minutes passed, during which we could have no other discussion at the table except how awful this restaurant was and how hungry the poor baby was. Her daughter hadn't said a word about being hungry this whole time and was constantly playing her loud iPad game without headphones, disturbing all the other diners around us. Ironically, she said that Americans these days were just too selfish and had no respect for motherhood. I chimed in, "I'm with you on that last part." And to my utter shock, instead of laughing at my joke, my girlfriend seemed annoyed with me. So after a few minutes, the waiter comes back and says the potatoes will be out very soon. That's when Ellen did something I never thought I would see in real life. Ellen took 3 singles and a 5 out of her wallet and put them on the table in full view of the waiter. Then she took 1 single away and said, "Every table I see getting potatoes before us is a bill gone." I was absolutely mortified. The waiter, to his unending credit, just took a deep breath and said, "I don't have control over the order in which the kitchen fires tickets, but what I can tell you is it should be out any minute." He then left without saying anything disparaging. I had been holding my tongue all night as well, in the name of my relationship. But once the tip hit the table, I figured that if my girlfriend was half the woman I thought she was, then she wouldn't mind my speaking up at this point. If anything, she'd be supportive, right? So I scooted my chair back a bit and said, "Listen, I know what you're doing with the cash on the table, but that kind of thing makes me really uncomfortable and it's just not called for. Please put the money away or we can just continue this some other time." My girlfriend's dad spits back, "What? How cheap do you have to be to not believe in tipping service workers?" Before I could process whether he was serious or yanking my chain, Ellen shocked me with, "No, you know what? You're right, this isn't necessary. I should have known better than to be relieved." So she folded the bills back into her wallet, patiently waited for the next plate of mashed potatoes to be carried out, and when it wasn't delivered to us, she went right up to a stranger's table and picked it up off their table. She half explained something about her daughter starving to death as she was walking away with the stranger's food, but unsurprisingly, that wasn't convincing enough for them. The old lady she took it from followed her right over to our table and tried to take it back. I was already searching for my coat tag in preparation to go, but a shoving match was beginning to unfold. Between Ellen and an elderly woman with a tennis ball walker, and far be it for me to sit through all that had happened only to leave just as the night was getting interesting. The elderly woman was like, "Give me back my potatoes." "Who are you?" And the poor little girl was like, "Mommy, it's okay, don't take someone else's food." But it all fell on deaf ears. Ellen yelled at the old lady, "How could you sit there and eat these when my daughter hasn't even been served yet? She's sitting here hungry, just a little girl, and you're over there stuffing your face? Come on, other potatoes will be out any minute." And the old lady just said, "Great, if they'll be out any minute, then what's the effing problem?" To which Ellen still found holier than thou ground, gasping, "Language, please." Finally, the waiter, and this time someone higher up as well, came over to separate them as they had begun to raise their voices and cause a disturbance. Staff had already asked Ellen to turn down her daughter's iPad multiple times without heat, and I'm guessing the waiter informed management about the tip on the table and the stunt she pulled because this was their final straw. They told us we were going to have to leave the restaurant, but we don't even have our food yet. Ellen complained to the guy. This was clearly not the manager's first rodeo. You can take the food that's already been served free of charge. Everything else will be cancelled. Please leave immediately. The old lady didn't miss her chance to knock the potatoes right onto the floor so he couldn't try to take them with us. Nothing else had been served yet, so we had to leave without any food. When my girlfriend and I were finally alone in our car, she said, "Can you believe that?" And I said, "Not at all, and I really can't believe you didn't warn me." And she went, "How could I have known about any of that?" And confused, I asked, "Is she not usually like that?" Even more confused than me, my girlfriend asked, "Who?" "Your mom." What's my mom got to do with the terrible service at that place? That was the beginning of the end of our relationship. The fact that she didn't see anything wrong with her mom's behavior and that I'd been marrying into that situation shook me too deep. We both dodged a bullet in more ways than one. In hindsight, we weren't right for each other, regardless of who her family was. My entitled sister demanded to have my fat wedding dress because she's pregnant. I refused, so she came up with a solution. Her solution was insane. 2 months ago, my younger sister Lucy and her fiance held a big dinner event with everyone and their mom because they had some big news they wanted to share. They found out a few weeks prior that they are expecting a baby. We were all very excited for them, but as soon as everything settled down, Lucy then stood up and made a toast to me. She said she was thankful for having a bigger heart and size sister like me to gift my wedding dress to her since she is getting married with a baby bump. I was shocked and tried to ask her what she meant by that as politely as possible. My stepmom responded with, "Don't worry, it's just one of those sister teasings you have never been able to comprehend." I was humiliated by everything and burst into tears in front of everyone. I ran to the bathroom while my stepmom said "see," mocking me while she told me to grow up. Lucy said I ruined the most exciting news of her lifetime, but that I could not possibly understand that since I have a child-free lifestyle. I then asked her rather rudely why the hell she thought I would be giving her my wedding dress. Apparently her and my stepmom had talked and decided that since my wedding was not until March, and since I am fatter than them, I would not mind just loaning my dress or buying another one since I had saved and invested with my big degrees. I double majored in aerospace engineering and theatre, and my fiance majored in physics and philosophy. Thanks to my degree in skills, I designed my wedding dress, which both of them have always hated. My sister then went on to say that it's okay if it was not altered because I am so much bigger that she'd easily fit even pregnant. Lucy then said that if I don't give it to her, then I am no longer a bridesmaid. I told her that's fine and stormed out of the bathroom. Everyone except my dad, Lucy's fiance, and my fiance had left. They consoled me and said they would talk to my stepmom and sister about everything before I went home. The next day, both my sister and my stepmom blew up my phone saying I'm destroying the family and clearly don't care about my soon-to-be niece or nephew by not allowing my sister to have my dress. I never responded and ended up getting harassed by a group of people on their side for a whole week. By the end of the week, it had gotten so bad that someone left a crap on my doorstep with a picture of my face stuck in it. It only stopped because my brother-in-law told Lucy he would be leaving her if she did not cut it out. Things have been quiet ever since then, until tonight when I got a call from my sister saying she has scheduled a termination tomorrow for her baby girl since she can't fit into her dress. She then said that I could stop all of this if I just honored her simple request of giving her my dress. I told her that if she was terminating her baby over a dress, then she does not deserve to have any children and her baby girl can be a gift from God to another person who will actually love her and not place fabric over her. She responded that since I am child-free, I don't know what a good parent is. The length of a mother's love and could never be better than her. I hung up on her and she sent me a text with pictures of documents showing when, where, and time of the appointment. I called her fiance and told him everything and sent him screenshots of the text she sent. He said he had no clue about the termination or the gender of the baby and was going straight home to talk to her about it. My entitled mother disowned me when I was 7 because her new husband didn't like me. Then she came crawling back for help years later. I am my mother's oldest biological child. When I was 5, my father passed away and she remarried my stepdad when I was 6. When I was 7, I was sent away to live with my father's sister who lives states away because my mother's husband didn't want me to live there anymore. They used to pay my aunt a little money to watch me, but when I was 11, that stopped. My aunt and uncle worked low-paying jobs and had 2 of their own children, so they couldn't really afford the extra expense of having me around without that help. They let me stay and continued to treat me like one of their own. I very rarely saw my mum. I think I saw her 3 times between 7 and 18. She never even called. She went on to have 3 more children with my stepdad and never formally introduced me to them. Growing up, I used to stalk my siblings and parents on social media. That's actually how I found out I have half siblings. I stalked them to see what their life was like and it was polar opposite to mine. They regularly went on expensive vacations, lived in a massive house, and owned the latest gadgets. I went to college and got married at 23. My mother and siblings have no idea I'm married. I'm currently 28 and doing well financially. My husband and I own our own home, and we have several very profitable investments and work high-paying jobs. My cousins and I all contributed to help my aunt and uncle to finally purchase their own home last year. Recently, my mom showed up to my aunt's house begging for financial help. Apparently, my stepdad suffered from a gambling addiction a few years ago and lost all their savings. He then slunk into alcoholism as a way to cope and ended up losing his job, and they can't afford to keep their house without help. My aunt explained she didn't have any money to help her. When my mother demanded to know how she could afford her new house if she had no money, she explained what me and my cousins had done. My mom then asked for my number. When she called me and explained the situation, I told her I couldn't help. She kept begging me and claimed my siblings would be made homeless if I didn't help them. I told her maybe she should sell some of their fancy stuff or they could all get jobs like my cousins and I had to. I hung up before she could reply. Since then, I have been receiving message after message from my mom, my siblings, and even my stepdad begging me for help. I have never spoken to my siblings in my life. They've begun harassing my husband and my sister-in-law. They've also reached out to my aunt and cousins multiple times trying to get them to convince me to change my mind.